man.
It's like magic.
Well, hello there. My name is HW.
Hey, I'm the Sooze.
Sooze, how touch sensitive is the Kemper?
Dude, I mean, well, it's that touch sensitive.
It's that touch sensitive. You know, so this is a profile we call 2Rec3. And it's a profile of an amp called a Ruby from 2Rock. And, you know, it was profiled with mics that I set up and experimented, and as the gain went up, I adjusted where, you know, how much level of those mics and everything. But that amp is based on a Trainwreck Express, an amp known to be uber touch sensitive. And especially the high gain Trainwreck Expresses really have no clean headroom. I mean, it goes from off to like, whoa, that's a lot of gain.
Right.
But then it just stays at that amount of gain, and the saturation just goes up. And, you know, we love tube amps for the reason that we say nothing sounds like tubes. And we love the way they compress, the way they distort, the way they just feel under your fingers. I don't know if digital can compete.
I don't believe you.
Okay, actually, I think digital can compete really well. And one of the reasons is that right there, that amount of touch sensitivity. You know what I'm saying? It's absurd. It's absurd. And it's something belonging to only... What you just did right there is something that is a characteristic of fine guitar amplifiers. Like, we have profiled so many amps. We have owned and played so many amps. Very few of them do that.
Yeah, right. Totally.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I've been thinking a lot about that term touch sensitive. And it isn't just that it gets gainy with the volume up and it gets clean with the volume down. It's about the quality of the sound at all ranges, you know, of the volume knob.
Yeah.
You know?
And I think even there's an EQ to it where something could actually be very touch sensitive. But a lot of times we add treble bleeds to our guitars because we feel like it gets too dark. And one of the things I notice about you know, these profiles is they actually have a pretty sizzly high. And what that means is it's not displeasing when you really get going, but when you clean it up, there's still enough high end left.
Yeah. Okay.
It really does a trick with this style of guitar. So you were showing them on P90s, and those things can really bark or be sort of pleasant, you know. P90s are like all types of dogs. It could be a little yappy dog, or it could be like a Rottweiler. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Let's see what it does on a guitar like this.
Yeah.
Pretty cool, huh?
That's very cool. Yeah, that's a nice trick with the two volumes.
Yeah, that's the advantage. I never, you know, for years I never quite understood why people would want two volumes. It just means there's two things to adjust. You know, so on a Strat, it's really accessible. Actually, on this PRS, it's very accessible because on a Les Paul, it's oriented the other way. But yeah, it means you can, if the pickups are good, if they're not too muddy, right, you can have a nice brighter thing up here. You can bring it down, and then you can have this snarling, angry bridge. and it's...
Turns into like a clean switch instead of a...
It totally turns into a clean switch, a mood switch, a mad switch, an emotion switch.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And the nice thing about, you know, this profile on this amp is when you go down to like a low volume signal, the quality of the sound is still great. You know, it's not anemic, it's not small. It sounds like you would want the amp to sound like if you just walked over and turned it down.
It does. Let's try it on one of these, because even on a Strat, now on a Strat there's a different thing, right? You can clean it up one with a volume knob, but you also have the 2 and the 4 position, which are always lower output, less mid-range, and less mid-range means less gain. So we get that touch sensitivity thing out of it.
Right.
Try that with the Strat.
It's great, man.
It's really ridiculous, and so that's where I kind of like I be honest. For me, I scratch my head when I hear people go like, "Well, nothing sounds like tubes."
Right. Yeah.
It's kind of like, well, oh gosh. Now here's one thing you got to bring into the conversation, which is tube amps like act the way they do for a lot of reasons. But it's not just the tubes. It's also a series of gain stages where those tubes are placed. And so you can get breakup in one and compression in another that can give you a very desirable feeling. So if you put a compressor before an amplifier, what's it going to do? It's going to even out all your dynamics, right? But if you have compression after a gain stage, what's it going to do? It's going to give you control over that first gain stage in terms of gain. You can push or leave clean. You know, you can make it really punchy, you can make it really dirty, or you can pull back and have it be clean. And then if there's compression after that, right? If maybe there's compression in the phase inverter, or there's compression in another gain stage in the preamp or in the power amp, that's where you start to get an evening out of dynamics. And then amps feel like if you play hard, they break up, and if you don't play hard, they stay clean.
Right.
But one of the fabulous things is when a tube amp does this, and it, to a degree, evens out the dynamics. That's when it feels something. I mean, imagine if you could get dirtier, but you had to jump 20 decibels to do it.
Right.
It would be terrible to play, right? So even though we want, and we're used to amps being quieter and cleaner, and then dirtier and louder, we like, to a degree, the compression after the gain stage. And one of the killer tricks that Josh Myers figures out, if anybody has watched any of Josh Myers' videos, he is a total shredder playing. He's done a bunch of Kemper videos. But one of the things he really likes to do is come into the amp section here and ride this compressor higher. That compressor is the last parameter before volume. So in the amplifier area, it's actually allowing you to add a compressor between the amp and the cabinet. And we've talked about on this channel, to do that in the analog world would be extremely difficult, right? You would have to put a load box on the amp, bring the line out to a compressor, compress it, bring it back to an amplifier, amplify the signal again, and then drive a speaker. But with digital, you can do that because a profile is breaking up what's the amplifier and what's the cab, so we can put something in the middle of it. So when you look in the amp section on the Kemper, volume is the last thing there. It's literally just boosting that signal. The second to last thing is this compressor. So it's adding compression, right? So I'm gonna let you play this, but you tell me how this feels. I'm gonna let you start playing. I'm gonna put this on 0, and then I'm gonna ride it up. But try to play really kind of clean, just with touch.
Do you want this all the way up?
Yeah. Leave it all the way up. But play real light, and then try to go real heavy. super noticeable, right?
Oh, totally.
Now, if you're watching on a phone or a laptop, like most people watch videos on YouTube and Facebook and stuff, and also the compression that comes on YouTube and Facebook, it's hard to hear that the levels were changing a bit. Like, the more compressor we add, the more when it's clean, you can hear it grabbing those notes and bringing it up. Yeah. And then the less noticeable the difference when you really dug in was in this room, right? It doesn't get as loud. Yeah. So that's where, to me, it's like, wait. We have control over the compression. That doesn't exist. Yeah, what a desirable parameter. Now, honestly, anything above 4 to me is quite ridiculous. Okay, but that's just me, right? But that's just me. I usually set this at 1.5, and it feels like an amplifier. You know what I mean? Yeah. More touch sensitive than most amps I've played.
This amp,
the Kemper,
and the Pro. Oh,
I mean, look. This profile is very touch sensitive. It is capturing an amplifier that has those characteristics, right? And we couldn't ask it to do this to a Vox on 8. Yeah. Because there wouldn't be any dynamics, right? It's just cooking too hot. Yeah. It's just, if you breathe on the strings, it'll explode, right? Yeah. And it just sounds like explosions. A Tweed Deluxe, same thing. You're not going to have, you need headroom to do this, you know? Is the Kemper touch sensitive?
I think it's super, yeah.
I mean, you know, you kind of got, it's the type of thing you got to play for yourself. You know, you got to try it. Yeah.
Yeah, this profile in particular has a sense where, like, if I go there, it's going to go there with me. If I pull back, it's going to, I'm still audible, but I can pull back, and there's a whole range in there I can play with, rather than, I think some of the impressions of something digital are, I have this much room to play with. You know, it's quiet and loud, but that's it, you know.
Yeah, and I'm not going to name any names, but I think there's some other stuff on the market right now that does not have this quality. Yeah. And I don't mean quality in terms of sound. I mean the quality of, do I really feel like I feel when I'm playing a tube amp? Yeah. Is there sort of this relationship of compression and gain and volume that's there? Now, something that's very different, and it should be like noted, the Kemper decouples volume and gain. That's different than a tube amplifier. So a lot of times I hear people saying, like, I don't understand, I can't boost the input, like it won't get louder. And that is a function of taking away volume and gain. Like, it's allowing you to increase the gain, but it's not increasing the volume. You can increase the volume, but you need to sort of do it in the effects chain, or else you're fighting the input stage. And we have some other videos talking about how to get around that. In a tube amplifier, you have volume and gain are one. Right. The thing creating the volume also creates the gain,
they work
right?
together.
It's the tube, right? It's that is the process of amplifying the signal. In this, it's completely separate. It's, let's dirty it up, but we don't have to get louder.
Yeah, totally.
It's different, but it feels good.
And I'll add too, like, we have the privilege of sitting in here listening to the real amp and listening to the profile get
100%,
made
100%.
And going back and forth. I mean, and not as a sales pitch, you know, but it really does. I mean, we're not losing touch sensitivity by going from the amp to the profile. Like, it really captures it.
Yeah, and there's some minor sort of differences in EQ. Sometimes there's a little bit of roll off in the low end, and we always noticed, like, cleaner stuff, people will go, I think that's the amp, but then dirtier stuff, they go, that's the amp, but they'd be pointing to the Kemper, and it's because they like the slight sort of the way it tightens the low end just slightly, and they'll go, that's it. And that's really, if you go watch, I mean, to get super meta here, if you go watch that Anderson's video, you know, can the Kemper save chappers? He gets his own amp wrong, like, for that reason. Yeah. It's dirty, it's distorted, and he goes, that's it, it's tight, it's good, and it's not his amp, right? Right. Is it touch sensitive? I think it's so touch, it's ridiculous. Yeah. You know what I mean? If you say, I want more touch sensitivity than this, it's like a kid on Halloween who just dumped out his candy bag. And there's like more candy than they could eat. And another kid walks up to you and was like, hey, we got to get some more candy. And it's like, we got more candy? We're more touch sensitive.
Right.
than 99% of the amps we've ever played. All the ones I've experienced. Yeah. You know what I mean? Your Hot Rod Deluxe doesn't do anything even close to this, right?
You have any Snickers bars?
I'm all out. Only Milky Ways.
I'm a one-track mind when you talk about Halloween candy. But
this has been good. I've been HW.
Hey, I'm the Sooze.
Sooze, why don't you play us out?
Sure.